Society often presents retirement like it's some sort of easy thing that of course everyone would want to do as early as they possibly can. But in our experience, that's actually pretty rare. A lot of the nurses we help, they're not really sure how they should retire or how comfortable that idea is, and they tend to procrastinate because they're not comfortable with feeling about that decision. We recently met with a 60-year-old nurse that found this conversation particularly challenging. She started out with lots of questions about things like Social Security, health insurance, her pension, investments, but naturally I tried to bring her around to the whole point of what are you trying to accomplish from a quality of life perspective? Why are you trying to retire in the first place? And she talked about how her job has become incredibly difficult and she feels like it is killing her. She is not getting fulfillment and satisfaction from what she's doing any longer. And yet when I talked about that as being the driving purpose for what she's trying to do from a decision-making perspective, she brought up, well, I have to keep working though, because I have my daughter on my health insurance, and that's something that's important to me and I need to do. And I said, well, health insurance is certainly something we need to think about, and health insurance for your daughter is important, but we can address that issue. That is not the reason why you continue working when you're describing your job as being that awful. So then I asked, well, in a perfect world, where would you want to live? And she wasn't real sure, but she brought up state income taxes. And I reminded her, you don't live somewhere because of the state income taxes that you pay. You live somewhere based on quality of life, and then we deal with whatever state income tax liabilities there are. And then I asked her, well, in a perfect world, how much would you need in order to be able to maintain the quality of life that you want to have in retirement? And she said, well, I'm not really sure, but I want to travel and I want to spend time with family and I have certain hobbies I like to do. So she wanted to spend a lot in retirement, but she brought up, well, but what about taxes? And what about investments? And she brought these things around to issues that aren't focused on quality of life. And when I would ask her the questions about trying to get her to focus on what was really important to her, she found that conversation stressful. It wasn't easy. She didn't really know. And yet, as a human being, she's sitting there trying to think through this relatively complicated decision and going, well, I'm not sure how to make that decision. Now, the value of a financial advisor, in our opinion, is taking this really complicated decision she's trying to make, and instead of focusing on each isolated thing, Social Security or investments or health insurance or a pension, our job is to align those resources as efficiently and effectively as we can to create the picture of what she's trying to accomplish. And that is different for every single individual that we help based on their values and priorities and motivations and goals. That's the challenge of financial planning. And it's perfectly okay for her not to know the answers to those important questions right now, and certainly they could change over time. That's why financial planning is more of a process. It's not something that you do once and then you're done, like answering a question about what happens to Social Security if I die or if I get married. So in this case, at the end of this meeting, we hadn't felt like we made a lot of progress, but she walked away understanding that there was a different perspective for her to consider this difficult decision and think in terms of what she really wants to do in life. That's hard for a lot of nurses. It's hard for a lot of women who are generally caregivers. They tend to think about others before themselves. And so a focus on quality of life really makes them reflect and have to think about, well, what do I really want? And we understand that retirement is a major transition for most people, and it's a highly emotional decision. And that's why we're there to help in any way that we can.